Last week we saw a sharp drop in US dollar value. Can you share a little more about what happened and what your thoughts are on the situation?
Yes, of course. Yes, the US dollar lost quite some value last week against a couple of foreign currencies, among them as well the Swiss franc. So the Swiss franc is as strong as it wasn't for the last 8 years. So we see over the long term and also in the medium term that the US dollar, after having a phase of strength last year, is coming back to lose value. The reason why it particularly happened last week was that the inflation figures from June came in within the US, which was 3%, which was lower than expected. But it is also important to understand that it was an effect of the basis effect. So the top of the inflation rate in the US was last year in June.
So having inflation rate lower than expected seems to me like good news. So why did it have such a negative effect on the currency?
Because the currency does appreciate if the investors believe that the central bank will increase interest rates further, because that will make it more attractive to foreign investors to move more money into the US dollar to benefit out of the higher interest rates. On the other hand, now, since the inflation rate is coming down, investors are expecting that the central bank will not further increase interest rates or even start to reduce interest rates in the foreseeable future again.
I see. So is the depreciation of the US dollar what we saw last week, was that a one-off event, or is that something that is just confirming a long-term development?
So the extreme level of depreciation last week, I would argue, was more of a one-time event. So that's not something we usually see, but you also have to keep in mind that a year ago the US dollar was much stronger. So within the last year it depreciated about 10%. And against the Swiss franc, as in particular, if you look over an even longer period, you see a rather clear trend that the US dollar is losing value.
Can you talk a little bit more about this trend? Maybe some numbers, how much has the US dollar lost, and why do you think that there's a long-term trend of the US dollar losing value?
Yeah, there are a couple of reasons for that, but I think more important it is to understand like the level of devaluation of the US dollar over the long term. So staying with the Swiss franc, if you look over the last 23 years, the Swiss franc has appreciated against the US dollar by 77%. In the same time period, the accumulated inflation rate in the US was 75%. So over the long term, there is a clear devaluation of the US dollar, which will protect you as a US citizen if you're sinking in US dollar, and if you're moving part of your wealth out or offshore into foreign currencies, it will protect your purchasing power in US dollar.